The Toyota C-HR has been a massive success for the company, and now it's back with a second generation model. It features a much more striking design than before, and it's also improved a little bit more in terms of interior space. More importantly, for the first time, it's now available as a plug-in hybrid, in addition to the two other hybrid options that are available, which are a 1.8 litre and a 2 litre, the latter of which is also available with an all-wheel drive system. The plug-in hybrid uses that more powerful 2 litre engine and combines it with a 13.6 kilowatt hour battery that sits below the car, and that has enough energy in it to provide around about 64 kilometers of electric only range. Now, you won't really be able to tell this is any different from the other CHRs, other than the fact that it has an additional flap on the side, which is where you charge the battery. And because of the size of the battery and the fact that this has two 3.5 kilowatt chargers, means it only takes about an hour to go from 0 to 80%, and overall a little bit more than 2 hours to fully charge the battery. So it is going to be quite convenient when you do need to top it up. It has a combined power output of 223 horsepower and 190 newton meters, and that makes it the most powerful of all of the current CHRs. Now, because of that plug-in hybrid system, the boot space is slightly smaller because of where the charger is located. You still get 310 litres of boot space, which isn't bad, but it is a step down from the 388 litres you get in the 1.8 hybrid. Nevertheless, if you do need more space, you can fold down the rear seats. They have a 60-40 split, and that will give you 1,155 litres of cargo volume. On the inside of the CHR, it is a totally new design, and it is an improvement in many ways from the previous generation. It is a very driver-centric setup, and what I mean by that is how everything is sort of shaped and everything is angled towards the driver. Now, that's a good thing, but it does mean the passenger in the front seat does get a bit of a raw deal. For example, this kind of whole setup here, the way this is all blocked off, it seems a little bit unnecessary, and it just kind of makes it feel a little bit more cramped when you're sitting in the front seat. It would be far better if this was just left open and the person in the front seat would have better access to things like this wireless charging pad and the storage area in the front. Nevertheless, build quality, as we've really come to expect for Toyota, is rock solid here. This is very well put together, very nice materials. The only thing is, God, they could just put a bit more color into this thing. It's just lots of kind of drab black. Okay, there's a little bit of ambient light here, and there's a little bit more down the side of the doors, but there's really not a whole lot. And, well, it could just be a lot better inside, a bit brighter. When you look, especially how design focused the outside is, and with this kind of bright goldy color, it looks great. And then when you get inside, it's just a little bit dull and boring. But nevertheless, that's maybe what more people will want. In front of the driver, you get a 12.3 inch display. It's able to configure it a number of different ways. It's very clear and easy to read, and this version also has a color head-up display in front of you. So again, stuff like your speed limit, what sign to take next, directions, all that kind of stuff is all there, very easy to see. You do also have a front-facing infrared camera that detects eye movement, so it makes sure that you're paying attention, and it will alert you if not. This car does have a lot of the latest driver assistance and safety related systems. That means as soon as you creep over the speed limit that's posted in that area, it will start to beep at you. It will give you a lot of alerts. Yes, you can turn some of it off, but by default it's always on. So maybe when you take this car for a test drive, that's something you might realize. The driving position itself is very good. There's a lot of adjustability in this, which is what I really do like. This is an electrically adjustable seat. You can adjust it a whole heap of different ways, forward, back, up and down. You can lift up under your legs here if you want. There's a manually adjustable steering wheel, lots of positions there, so very easy to find a comfortable driving position regardless of really how tall or how short you might be. I do like as well the fact that yes, you have a 12-inch digital display here. It's nice to use, it reacts very quickly, but you do still have a bank of physical buttons here, which is very, very important. It's nice to see that Toyota hasn't put everything onto this touchscreen. Stuff like your climate controls, your heated seats in this case, all the things you're going to always kind of frequently want to adjust or use when you're on the move is all there, which is nice to see. Below that, you have a second row of buttons as well, including a camera display. You've got a parking assist function, heated steering wheel, which is something that you can have on the plug-in hybrid version. version, heated windscreen, all that kind of stuff. So nice to see that there's some physical controls here. You do have a pretty slender center console here. You do little kind of stubby drive selector here. You can also engage a B brake, which is a brake regeneration function, which is particularly useful in the plug-in hybrid because it allows you to put a bit more energy back in, and it will give you around about 80% the effect of engine braking. Great in urban and city use, for example, as well. It means you're using the brakes slightly less. You've got automatic hold for your handbrake, a drive mode as well, so you can go through like different versions. You've got sport, normal, eco, custom. Most people are probably just going to leave it in normal, and that's fine. You do also have an auto or an EV hold for the hybrid system as well, so if you want to maintain a certain level of battery charge, you can do that, and it will just act as a normal hybrid in between. Speaking of the navigation for a moment, this car is also equipped with a geofencing system that is available, so you can set up and have a certain area, maybe if you live in a low emission zone, for example, and the car will know when it enters that, and it will go into an electric mode only. That's great, but there's a bit of a caveat in that you've got to use the navigation and you've got to have a route active in order for this system to work. And if I'm honest, most people are probably not going to use Toyota's native infotainment system. They're probably just going to use something like Google Maps or Waze. So it's a bit of a pity that there's no kind of tie-in, or there's no kind of linking between those. But if you do want to use that function, it is there. You will just have to use it through the native built-in sat nav. That's the only thing. You can also equip the C-HR with a digital rear view camera, which is kind of handy because it doesn't have a rear wiper, so when your rear window does get a bit dirty, you still have this to fall back on. It does give a very clear display. It's great to use even at night, and if you want to have the normal mirror, you obviously can just switch that and it goes right back. Very easy to use, but it's a nice bit of kit. Now, that's the front. Let's have a look in the back seats. In the back seats, things aren't so good in the C-HR. Now, in the previous generation, we were quite critical about how claustrophobic it felt. And yes, Toyota did slightly improve it with this second generation C-HR. The window, for example, is a little bit bigger than before, but it's still kind of a little bit forward of where you sit. And if I'm honest, when you're sitting in here, it does still feel a little bit dark and a little bit drab. Okay, this car does have the panoramic glass roof, and that does make a nice difference. That certainly helps. You can see a little bit more out. But other than that, there's not a lot of entertainment back here for those sitting in the rear. There's a single USB-C charge port there. There's no vents in the back for anyone in terms of air conditioning. Backs of the seats don't have a seat pocket, only on the passenger seat. So if you're sitting behind the driver, as I am, you don't really have a whole lot to do. Yes, there's a cup holder built into the door. You do get an okay armrest, but it's not really the most generously equipped. There is a little bit of a hump in the middle because of how the hardware, the architecture is set up. The middle seat is quite narrow, but you can't pull down a center armrest if you're not going to use that. So again, it's another thing that's really pretty common to have in a lot of cars that's not in this Toyota. Other than that though, okay, the room is reasonable. I'm of average height, I'm about 5'9", and I've sort of got, you know, normal length legs and all that, and I can get my feet in underneath the seat in front, which is good. It's nice to be able to stretch out a little bit. And for reference, this driver's seat is set up for my driving position, and so I'm kind of sitting behind myself, as it were. And it's not bad. I'm okay. I do have actually pretty good amount of headroom, so I'll give it that. That's pretty good, especially considering that it does have a glass roof and they normally eat into it, but there's no sun blind in here as well, and that's really what takes away some of the headroom. Instead, the glass is treated with a special coating that reflects sun in summertime but keeps a bit of heat in wintertime. Other than that though, it's okay. You don't really want to be spending a whole lot of time in the back here. It is just a little bit dull and drab, and it's a real pity because it could have been that little bit better. The C-HR is a comfortable car to drive, that's for sure, and the suspension is nicely set up. There's a good balance between being able to be soft enough to soak up all the bumps, but at the same time you can actually drive with a little bit more enthusiasm through some of the sportier corners, and it does stay impressively flat. There's not really a lot of lateral body roll with this car. Having that extra power from the 2-litre engine and obviously the electric motor means that it is fairly quick to get up to speed. If you do need to accelerate or to overtake, for example, it's much more responsive than it was in the past. Yes, it does still rev a little bit more, but it's that elasticity that was there in some of the older hybrids is gone. This is a much more responsive powertrain now than what we've had in previous Toyotas. So that's pretty good too. And obviously it is still silky smooth as before when you're driving around town. Now, most people with their average daily commutes will probably be able to use the battery exclusively from getting from A to B, so long as you're pretty diligent about charging it up. Now, when you're out in the move, it does also have a couple of other features and tricks up its sleeve to help that. For example, it will use the navigation system and it will use the mapping information to detect when, for example, you're coming up to a bend or a curve, and it will actually add a little bit of regeneration there and then to slow the car down for that bend. Rather than wasting energy, it's using that energy and putting it back into the battery. It's all very small gains, but these all do add up over a journey to make it a little bit more efficient. That means you're using that combustion engine even less. Now, in some of these hilly mountainous roads, I did find that that feature was a little bit jabby sometimes in terms of how it scrubs off speed, but in town and cities it's really good, very good in how it works in terms of detecting a car in front, slowing down, and using the electric motor of the car here to slow itself down and put that little bit of energy back in. So it does have its benefits. It's not perfect, but it is a welcome addition to the C-HR's repertoire. You won't really notice any difference in terms of how the C-HR rides with the plug-in hybrid versus the regular hybrid model. Obviously, the main difference though is that it will drive that bit further using only electric power. And when you do have that battery charged up, it is very nice to drive. It's exactly how you'd expect an EV to drive. And while I wouldn't say it's all that fun to drive, it does put in a very good account of itself. Through the bends and through corners, it does stay impressively flat, and the actual road holding is very, very good. This feels a very sure-footed car, and also you don't really feel all that weight that you normally associate with larger and heavier electric vehicles. This does still feel a little bit lighter on its feet, a little bit more agile when you want it to be. The steering isn't the most communicative, but it's accurate in what it does, and it's very easy to place this car exactly where you want it. Now, of course, plug-in hybrids aren't for everybody, but for certain people, they fall into the perfect use case and suitability for what their needs are for a car. Okay, the C-HR isn't the biggest and it's not the most spacious in the back, but it's nice to drive, and if you're only going to be in it and maybe have somebody with you in the front, it's not a bad option. Well, that's our first drive of the Toyota C-HR plug-in hybrid. It's very good and very smooth in a lot of ways, and having that longer electric range will absolutely appeal to some people. The only thing is, this is also going to be pretty much one of the most expensive versions of the C-HR. Prices are still to be confirmed, but we reckon in Ireland at least this will cost around about €45,000, which is a lot more than what you get in the normal hybrid. And speaking of the normal hybrid, it really depends on how you're going to use this car. For example, if you spend a lot of your time driving in urban areas, even Toyota says that the regular hybrid can spend as much as 50% of the time using only hybrid power. So you might kind of wonder, why would you want a plug-in hybrid? I guess if you really want to have more of the feeling of having an electric car, but you still want to have that fallback safety net of having a combustion engine and not having to rely entirely on charging it all the time, especially over longer journeys, then yes, this does make sense. But it is, as I said, a little bit pricey when you look at what else is available out there in the market in terms of similarly sized pure electric vehicles, and even the Toyota BZ4X as well. Anyway, that's our first drive. We'd love to know what you think about this car. Tell us in the comments below. We always love hearing from our viewers. And if you want to know more about this, and indeed all of its rivals, head over to our website. It's CompleteCar.ie. You'll find it linked in the description below, and it's a great resource for finding your next new car. Thanks for watching.